Fantastic. Once again, officially, Namaste, very good morning, and welcome to this webinar on how we can deal with stress and anxiety through yoga practices. I'm sure some of you are already practicing yoga. You've been doing practice with us as well, Asana practice, Pranayama meditation. This will be a really high-level understanding of what happens during stress and what is stress, and then more importantly, understanding what yoga can offer to manage stress and also to manage anxiety. And with that knowledge, I think we'll all be able to prepare ourselves to start practicing yoga, especially if we are facing this challenge of stress and anxiety. Practice yoga and more mindfully, and why we are doing and what kind of yoga we should be doing. You'll have better clarity on that. Once again, I welcome people who are just joining in. Welcome to this webinar. Is there any question during my presentation? Please send it in the chat box. I should be able to read and reply. If there's an immediate question that you need to be clarifying, as in during the presentation, raise your hand and we should be able to ask the question. But ideally, at the end of the presentation, maybe once you go through everything I had to share, maybe there are some questions already answered through those slides. So wait for the end as well. And definitely at the end, there is a big section on question and answers, especially personalized. Maybe you have a personal question, something to do with your own condition and your practice, that we take it up at the end. All right, let me start presentation. Let me know if you all can see the screen. I hope you guys can all see the screen. Just a quick thumbs up will do. Yeah. All right. Dealing with stress and anxiety, that's the topic for today. And I'm sure all of us have experiences at some point or the other. So it's very relevant at this time and age. So let's, quick introduction of myself. It's Pradeep Sattwamaya here, and I have been educated formally in yoga. I've done an MSc in Applied Yogic Sciences. This is where you apply the practices of yoga into everyday need. It could be health, could be physical, could be mental, or even otherwise, general fitness or sports, children's education, all sorts of things. So it's an application, a field that I mastered in, and I have been teaching yoga. I've been certifying yoga teachers ever since. It's been over 25 years, and lots to learn along the way. What I'm going to share today is from all that experience of teaching and certifying teachers, and understanding how people respond to yoga. I had the yoga department here at Shvasa. So all the teachers are kind of trained, the formats are set, and I also check on the quality. If there's any feedback that you want to give me about the yoga practice at Shvasa, most welcome. All right, let's start off with natural human responses. I mean, to understand stress, we need to understand how we respond to things, right? And so maybe I'll keep it very simple, at least enough for us to understand the topic for today, and we'll not get too deep into the technical aspects of stress, medical conditions. But if there's any medical doctors here, you're most welcome to share, add, and enlighten us. But otherwise, I'll keep it very simple. But if you have any questions, I'll try and answer it to the best I can. Okay, first and foremost, you have two kinds of response broadly. And there could be many other theories talking about it, but broadly what's accepted and what's used, utilized is the two responses. One is fight or flight. The other one is rest and digest. The name says it all. I'm sure some of you might have heard of this, but understanding this will help us what happens during stress and what is that we need to do. First one is fight or flight. I mean, this is a very natural response to external threats. Now, you are, say, about to cross a road and there's a speeding car. And it's an external stress, and I see the car speeding, and then my body and my mind reacts to it. And now that I need to do in a fraction of a second, as soon as possible. I cannot think, I cannot reason, and I cannot then take action, right? And so that quick response of the body, whatever is required, the hormones are secreted and the muscles get ready and the circulation changes, the heartbeat changes, everything physiologically, a lot of preparation happens in that fraction of a second to react to that speeding car heading toward them. Now, this obviously is a very quick response, and it's called fight or flight. Either you fight it out or you take flight, I mean, run away. I mean, this is more in terms of how humans and animals have evolved in the forest, but it equally applies to the present day as well, different kind of threats, of course. So that's the first response we have to external threats. It could be the intensity of the threat could vary. Sometimes very mild threat, sometimes very a strong one. And our response also varies accordingly. But all of this responding requires a certain part of us to be alert, and that's called the fight or flight response. On the other hand, when we don't have any external threat, and I feel very comfortable in my home, in my room, and what do? I mean, I don't have any worries, and then I might even fall asleep, right? I'm very relaxed. And when that happens, the internal functions of the body starts to take over. And those internal functions, especially breaking down food or repair work going on in some part of the body, digestion, like it says, all of these activities can be stalled, especially if there is an external threat. These internal activities are stalled for a moment, and that external threat is taken care of first before you can go back to doing all of this. So sleep itself is one such activity where all these repair works go on. And so the second response we have, one is external threat. The other one, when there is no external threat, then the focus, the energy moves towards something that can be done at peace internally. So that's the rest and digest. Maybe you've heard of the terms like sympathetic and parasympathetic. These are technical, but anyway, you must have heard. Sympathetic is where this we prepare for the external threat. Parasympathetic is where we don't experience any threat, or we don't perceive a threat outside, and that's when we could go inside. And the other thing that happens to the mind during this time is externalizing and internalizing. Now, during an external threat, I need to have my senses and the mind focused outwards because it's a threat outside that I'm dealing with. So it's important for my survival. So I, prepare my whole body, especially the important ones, the sense organs, the mind, the physical body, muscles and energy that is required to take action. All of that is directed towards the outside, external. And during parasympathetic or the rest and digest response, it is turned inward. That's when, the breaking down of the food, the repair work, recuperation, all of that is happening. So you could also look at this as two. One is that requires for me to externalize. The other one is I don't need to externalize. I'll go with it. Okay, just have these in mind and we can start off our conversation on stress. So what is stress? And stress is something that we all need to have. We just saw that, there is a external threat, which means we all experience that, which means all of us will go through stress because of some kind of threat outside, some kind of a challenge, if not a threat, a challenge outside. I need to deal with it. And so I go through stress. So it's a very normal response. This is something that we need to understand. Stress is a very normal response. All humans All animals go through stress, and that's what keeps them alive in a way. So stress is normal. And the normal also means, and healthy also means, that I am responding to the intensity of the threat as well. Meaning, I wouldn't really panic if there is a small threat outside. So it'll be related to what intensity of this threat. So that's very important, both physiologically and behavior response to the stressful situation, threat, or external pressures. So this is clear. Stress is normal. That's the first thing we need to understand. And I respond based on what the threat is about or its intensity. I don't overreact. That's very healthy. That's very normal. And once the threat is gone, I go back to normal. That is also very healthy. That's a healthy person who reacts to the external threat to the extent it has to be, and then comes out of it and is no more in threat or no more experiencing stress. So that's a healthy stress that we all need, and that's what keeps us functioning effectively throughout our day. Causes of stress could be, we talk about threat, one example I gave, but it could be anything. It could be big changes in life, pressure to get things done, could be at work, could be at home, could be in our businesses, could be in life, right? Responsibilities that we've taken up, and some of them overwhelming. And so you undergo stress even when you have to take up such responsibilities. Uncertainty, instability, all of this also brings in stress, and other abuses, a thing that happens to us externally when we interact with people is also something that causes stress. Anyway, there could be many reasons. There could be an exam stress for children, or getting married, being with a new partner, all kinds of stress that we could experience throughout our life. So these are some examples, but I think we get a fairly good idea. But what is anxiety? We understood stress and it's required, it's normal response, and there are various reasons why we undergo stress. But what is anxiety? Now, anxiety is when you are feeling apprehensive or unexplained thoughts of impending doom. Meaning, stress had a very real threat or a challenge outside mostly, and I responded to it. And once it was taken care of, I came back to normal. But anxiety isn't that. Anxiety is where even without a stress or a threat outside, you start to react. The body behaves as if it's under stress, even without any good reason. And this constant chatter in the head of, say, impending doom or harm continues. Even when the threat is gone, this thinking goes on, this cycle of what would happen to me and how bad it will be and why me, and all kinds of thoughts continue over and over again. And that the body is still reacting as if it's in stress. And just to tell you, the stress response that we talked about, the example that I gave you, a speeding car, it takes a lot of energy from me to respond to that kind of a situation, which means it's a high cost energy. A lot of energy is spent. And I'm willing to spend that high energy for that short period of time, just as far as it'll take me to go out of that threat situation. Once I'm safe, I don't have to spend that much of energy. So stress is a very high energy consuming response. But if you are in anxiety, just imagine you're in stress for longer periods of time, even when the threat is gone, which means it's so much more exhausting than just stress response. So anxiety is why it's exhausting, and it causes other issues along with it. So I hope you have a fairly good idea of stress and how stress could lead to anxiety in some of us. Just a quick summary of what we just talked about. Like I said, stress is one-time, short-term, whereas anxiety is, it just lingers on. It just continues even after the threat is gone. And there's a recognized threat in the case of stress, but in terms of anxiety, I could imagine and I could just assume. And there need not be a trigger at all. It just happens. I could just have an anxiety attack anytime without a threat in front of me. Symptoms-wise, largely similar, which is why they are to be studied together and understood together. And see on the left side, orange is all symptoms of stress. I think some of these we've all have experienced to some extent, some degree. Moodiness, irritability, anger, loneliness, dizziness, you can go on. Similarly, on the other hand, the green part talks about anxiety, where you feel restless, tense and sweating, nervousness, and it continues, right? It's lingering along for a long period of time. And there are some symptoms which are very common: fast heartbeat, fast breathing, and other lower gut issues that you face. Now, like I said, it's a very high energy consuming response. And if you're in it for a very long time, you are going to be exhausted. And that causes immunity problems, and that attracts a lot more sickness, illness, and it just snowballs into something very big, which is why stress is a cause for so many illnesses these days, including very physical weight gain is also because of stress sometimes, and other immunity illnesses are also because of stress. Reproductive issues that most of us would have, we see around us today is also because of stress, and cancer aggravates also because of stress. So you could talk about stress as being, contributing factor for so many things, simply because the energy that needs to be allocated for certain hygiene purpose work, repair, recuperation work is not available. And that's diverted for something that's maybe sometimes unreal because of, in the case of anxiety. And even in terms of stress, even the kind of world we live in is that this speeding car is coming at me almost every 15 to 20 minutes or every hour. So that's a problem. I mean, if it just once a day, I would have just spent that energy and I'll go back to living my life. But the stress situation that we encounter in the present day has just increased simply because of various technology we are using and the kind of world we live in. There is stress almost every hour and maybe more, and every day. And so the body cannot simply take that. And the reason why stress is bad these days. All right, warning signs, maybe a quick look at the warning signs, especially, the stress I said is normal, but when you have to wake up, when you have to say that I need to see a doctor, it's gone beyond my control. Because stress, like I say, is normal. We all have experience. So it'll be very difficult for us to even differentiate, have I crossed that line? Do I have to see a doctor now? Do I have to take some immediate steps to control this now? Otherwise, within those normal limits, we go through stress, we come back. Body has the ability to recoup, especially, a simple thing like sleeping well in the night will help us recoup from the stress from the previous day. The next day, you're back to normal almost. So understanding some of these warning signals, I might have too many of them, but if you want to take a picture, that will be easier. We already talked about a significant change in personal hygiene habits happening because of stress. Because once you're stressed, especially in anxiety, you don't have time to even for personal hygiene. You might even skip things that we assume to be very, normal for all of us, like taking a shower, brushing our teeth, hygiene. Just basic hygiene would be difficult. Then you need to wake up and say, okay, I need to look into this more deeply. Prolonged low mood or self-harming, or even thinking of harming yourself, suicidal thoughts, feeling out of control, everything, situations in life. Then, of course, if you're also experiencing misuse of drugs, it could start as medication, but you would probably, if you get to a point where you're addicted to them, and not just medication, but alcohol and drugs and other things, that you need to talk to a doctor or seek help. Other things would be irrational fears, significant change in sleeping patterns. That's important to notice. That's easy to notice as well. If you're not falling asleep, and for many days, it's not just 1 or 2 days, but it goes on for months, days and months together. So then you need to wake up. Sleep is not simply about that I'm not getting sleep. It could be underlying factors, could be so many. So we need to seek help. Eating habits also, if your eating habits have changed, appetite has changed, definitely you need to seek help. And chances are it also could be because of stress. Stress influences all of these very basic and important physiological functions of our body. Okay, let's come to the very core of this webinar. Okay, what does yoga has to offer? Now let's talk about what yoga practice is in general, and then see which part of those can apply to the stress and anxiety dealing sessions or programs. Okay, so yoga in general is designed to be a very a conscious activity, be it body movement, be it breath, or be it thinking, whatever, it's conscious. That's the first part, characteristic of yoga. So conscious movement will help. That's how you differentiate yoga and other activities, asana and other activities. And it's also gentle and repetitive approach. We don't try and achieve everything in one day. There is a path, a journey that we take where we repeat over and over again. So which means very slowly we train our bodies, we train our breath, we train our minds, we train our sense organs over a period of time. And it's a gentle approach. Since it's gentle, it will also take a longer time to train, to change. And so that's another characteristic approach of yoga in general. And it's breath coordinated. Apart from being conscious and gentle and repetitive, it's breath coordinated. There's a reason behind that. You'll see that everything that you do, be it asanas, the physical movements, is breath coordinated. And you also know about a whole bunch of practices which are breath practices themselves. And even when you do meditational practices, breath is definitely part of that practice. So breath becomes part of almost everything you do, body, mind, sense organs, no matter what the aspect of yourself you are using, the breath is part of it. And so that's another differentiating factor of yoga practices. And another factor that differentiates yoga from other practices is the senses and the mind being engaged in the practice. You could say there are different practices for all of these, and also one practice could have all of these layers. Like, for example, if you're looking at only physical practice, yoga asanas, is it only physical? No, it has a breath component. It has a sense organ component. Maybe during your practice, you might have heard your teacher call out, say, look at your fingertip. What are you doing? You're just engaging your eyes. Or your teacher would say, keep listening to my instruction, follow my instruction. Or listen to your own breath, the sound of breath, or listen to the chant. You see, what is all of these instructions? This is a layer that's to do with the sense organs. And see, similarly, mind also being engaged. The teacher would cue saying, become aware of your lower back, become aware of your feet, become aware of the balance in the body, become aware of the stretch in the body. So yoga practice has all of these components. This is a general approach in yoga. And you'll see that all of this is a fantastic approach for managing stress. We'll see how in the next couple of slides. But this is about yoga, and yoga has some very important components already built in by design. And we don't have to do much to use this as stress, which is why yoga is a huge popular practice for stress. A straightforward, you can just pick it up and start using it. It will work. Okay. And the last one is inward looking. Yoga practices are inward looking. And if you can connect to what we were talking earlier about sympathetic and parasympathetic, you can by now tell that, okay, if it's inward looking, maybe it's triggering parasympathetic nerve activity. Easy to make that out, right? So when you practice yoga, yes, you start with being aware of the space around, but slowly by the end of the class, you're moving inwards. You're turning inward. That can only happen if you manage the outside pretty well. If you tackle the stress and the threats on the outside very well, only then you can turn inwards. Otherwise, your mind or your body won't allow that because it needs to ensure that it is safe. So yoga is naturally an inward turning looking practice, and hence will be very beneficial in stress management, because stress is an outward looking response, and I'm exhausted of that. I need to do something other than externalizing and exhausting myself. So that's the yoga practices in general, and specifically for stress. What are the principles? This slide is going to be very important, whether you practice yoga on your own or if you seek a teacher to practice. These are the very important approaches, principles, and practices that we can draw from yoga and use it. The first one is just a physical activity. Need not be just asanas, but any physical activity will do this. What it does, any physical activity, exercise, is it reduces stress hormones. There are many stress hormones that are released during this stress response, and that obviously needs to be tackled if it's turned on all the time. And so exercise activity, any physical activity, is a fantastic way to handle or reduce stress hormone. So asana practice, regular asana practice is, can be that practice at home by yourself or, with a teacher. Physical activity is required. If you sit quiet, the stress hormones are only going to build up. And so we have asanas for the physical activity. And next one, the approach, the principle of pacifying the nervous system. We talked about sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and we are trying to balance them out. And that can be done through body and breath both, and which is what we do in a yoga class. We use the body and we use certain specific postures for stress. I'll give you a very simple example, very high level again. We don't have to go into the details. Forward bends are parasympathetic nerve stimulating practices. Every time you do a forward fold, curl up and round your spine, cover your chest or cover your head, put your head down, these automatically triggers a parasympathetic activity, meaning it calms you down, it takes you inwards. So all forward bends that we do in yoga, every time you're asked to close your eyes, every time you're asked to go within, you're already triggering the parasympathetic. And yoga also has the other part, the externalizing or the backward bending activities. You need to expose your vital organs, the heart, the chest part, the lungs, and the abdominal face. And when you bend backwards, that's more preparing for external activities, externalizing. So yoga has both. So we could choose what we need to do in stress. So it's usually the forward folding, calming, pacifying the nervous system activities. And it can be done using both body and breath. Mind, okay, this is also very important and very relevant when we talk about yoga for stress, because understanding where the stress is coming, because it's so instinctive, the stress response is so instinctive. At some point, we could have triggered a wrong, we could have got into a wrong habit. And of course, anxiety is what then bothers us. But how do we rectify this? Because it's so instinctive, it's so fast, it's so quick, and it's so hormonal. Only by a certain reflection, a certain clarity that I get, a certain, being unattached to what is happening and looking at it very objectively. And these are things I need to do to even identify what is causing stress and what is leading to anxiety. Sometimes, like we see, right? I mean, we have stress, obviously, in the modern day, but there are also a lot of unnecessary stress that we take in our life. So how do we identify and stop those or work on those? That could happen in a meditative posture, because you need that grounding of the mind. You need certain reflective abilities. You need certain clarity on what is happening. And very important, being a witness, not identifying yourself, but to step back and watch as it's happening. That's when we can identify some of these parts of the whole process where we are going wrong or where we could take control. We need to just tweak that, switch that off or on, and then the rest of the part would change. How the body would respond would change. So all of this is another important part. See, the first two is coping up with stress and anxiety. But if you want to change, if you want to permanently come out of it, you need to get to meditation. So yoga has fantastic meditation practices, and certain philosophies also are useful in meditation, are used in meditation. And obviously you need to subscribe to a philosophy and then start using it. Some are, of course, like yoga philosophy is helpful. At least when you're practicing yoga, you would use the yoga philosophy, Sankhya for that matter. And you will reflect on those philosophy and it will answer slightly larger questions that we all might be asking ourselves about. What is life? What am I doing? Is this required? What happens if I don't do this? All sorts of questions can be answered through philosophy, and reflecting on certain philosophical concepts will also help in managing stress. And finally, enough relaxation is required, enough sleep is required, and yoga has ample of these practices. Yoga Nidra is a fantastic practice. If you've not practiced, you should try. Generally, after asana practice, we do Shavasana, we do some breath practices. They are also relaxing practices. Some are progressively relaxing. You engage them and then let go. And so all those practices are part of yoga. And finally, if yoga practice can help, or other activities included can help have a good night's sleep, you are targeting the stress problem that you have. So these are practices that we can pick. And we already saw in the previous slide that all of these are very naturally a part of yogic approach. So yoga practice usually has all of these components. We don't have to try too hard. So there's not unlike other illnesses where you need to carefully choose the practices of yoga, for stress, a large part of practice in yoga can help. Some practices you need to avoid, like I mentioned a few, like too much of back bends and various other practices that extroverts you. But otherwise, largely, most practices in yoga are suited for stress management and anxiety also for that matter. So, like I said, that was a very important slide. And the practices, like I said, giving an example, a forward fold like this, I said, parasympathetic stimulating, not just this asana, but these types of asanas. We do quite a bit of that. We do Paschima, Janushirasa, Baddha Kona, Upavishta, and even prone position, just lying down prone. A lot of those are naturally triggering the parasympathetic nervous system, and it counters the sympathetic nervous system. And what do we do in breath practices? All kinds. And there are some stimulating breath practices. And there are some pacifying ones. So we do the pacifying ones. It could be Nadi Shodhana, it could be Brahmari, it could be Shitali, Shitkari. Various such practices are pacifiers, meaning it calms down the nervous system. And some of them are probably stimulating ones. Those you need to avoid during stress. What do we have next? Yoga Nidra. A simple practice done in Shavasana. We talked about relaxation. We talked about even for us to even have that clarity of mind to watch ourselves, watch our body and body's response. Yoga Nidra is a fantastic practice. So we get to do all of this in this one practice. And of course, we have meditation. I talk about how certain faculties of the mind are awakened in meditation. Our ability to stay grounded, meaning being real, being in the present moment. Our ability to distance ourselves, our ability to look at things objectively, our ability to reflect upon what is happening. All of this would come only through meditation practice. So that is another practice that you should include when you are looking at managing stress. And I think these days, almost every one of us undergoes stress, youngsters and old people alike. And so these practices are for all of us. We have a 5-day challenge coming up next week. And here are some details about the practices. Group classes coming up, which will have all of these practices we just talked about. It's a 5-day, 23rd to 27th January. And timings, you will have ample choice wherever you are, EST or PST, to see if you want to book some of these classes and attend all 5 days. It's important, you do 5 is anyway not a big number, but good start. And after that, follow up to these will be that there will be such stress and anxiety management classes regularly. So this is more of a challenge, will be more specific and more 5-day start date, end date, but otherwise also you can continue working on. As long as we are active in our physical world, there's some or the other stress that we need to manage. And so these practices become almost a requirement for us every single day. Just quickly about Shvasa, some of you not yet practicing with us. We have online live yoga classes that happens, group sessions, small groups, usually that of 15. Personal sessions are also available. In some cases, you need to take up personal sessions or complement your group session with personal sessions. All age groups, like I said, stress bothers all of us. And so all age groups and health conditions are welcome. If it's a personal class, we can tailor make it. Of course, we have a strong tech team that will help us out, and this webinar itself is possible, and all that else that we do through our app and the platform is all because of the tech team. And so you'll have that support. Safe and secure platform, so you could just focus on your practice, not worry about other things. Okay, that's about our webinar on stress and anxiety. Any questions that you might have? Let me log out of the presentation. Time to ask questions. Anything that you think needs repetition, maybe more clarity on things that we talked, or anything that you want to add, most welcome. I told you, if there's anybody who's been handling stress, or you have other interventions for stress and you'd like to share and enlighten all of us, most welcome. Don't hesitate. It's not a one-way conversation. Or you successfully handled the stress aspect in the past and you'd like to share that with everybody here, most welcome.
Hey, I have one question. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm fine. So the question I had is that how do you inculcate the practice of being consistent? Like I always try and, I just think of it, but just being consistent with my practice is something I really fail to do. So
I think that's a very common concern for all of us, and because we have to do that every single day, it becomes very difficult. And for some of it's very natural; we just get into a habit very quickly. But some of us are body types or mental types are such that creating a habit is very difficult. And in the modern day, which is not helping, modern day we have these options and choice that really you don't have to have a habit of a certain thing. And you're also distracted by this. And so a mind also becomes that way, very difficult to build a new habit. So what can help is, there are all kinds of excuses that we have for why we are not doing a practice. Say, for example, an asana practice, and you could come up with a lot of excuses. What I found was very useful, at least would rule out a lot of the excuses, is to do an early morning practice. Anytime I personally, when I had to do evening practices, I would have 101 excuses to not do it. Even though I had the time, I had whatever, So morning practice has helped me stick to the practice. That's my personal experience. And I'm sure for most of us, if you could take time out, which is not interfering with everything else we are doing in life, we don't want to change that part. We have family, we
Right.
have work, business, whatever we are doing, let that stay intact. Let's bring, this yoga part outside of it and start small. To create habit, you have to start with one thing, one change, and for a short period of time. So you started yoga, first day, maybe first week, you could do twice or thrice, 3 times, 4 times, that's enough. And maybe half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. And only then you start to build very slowly to a 1 hour practice and to an everyday practice. So that could also help get into a habit, being slow and yet steady, and working on it, and eventually reaching your target. You want to practice every day and for an hour every day, and that could happen soon. And the other part could be, many things could help, but I think at home, if you have a partner, if you have family support that also is looking into practicing together, or at least believes in the practice, that also will help. Someone motivating you will also help, especially if you're not the kind who needs, not the kind who can do things on your own. Don't hesitate. Why don't you take help from someone else responsible for your daily practice? So don't hesitate to take help from others around.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's just your mental blocks and your excuses for not being consistent.
Yeah,
that is what I'm struggling. Like, I do it once a day, or like one day I do it, second day I do it, but the third day it's like, no, I just catch up with my sleep, and then it just goes for the top.
Yeah, very normal for all of us. Yeah, we've gone through those kind of situations.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Any other question? Sure, Alma.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Pradeep,
Chitra, right?
This is Chitra. Yeah. Could you name any specific pranayama that a stressed person should avoid?
Let's see. Breath awareness itself is something that you should start with the physical practice. The seated pranayamas that you're talking about, right? Are something for later. So how you should start a breath practice is start by watching breath during the physical movement. That itself is a fantastic start and a good foundation. The next thing you need to do is to regulate the breath during this physical activity. First is just watching the breath. That itself is quite difficult for us to connect to breath, be aware of breath. If I ask you, when was the last time you were aware of breath by yourself without anybody telling you? I'm sure most of us would answer, I don't remember, right? So awareness of breath, connecting to breath, watching breath, and then regulating breath, and all of this during the physical activity. That's the first step. And if you've done that enough, which is why we say that asanas are an important foundation for pranayama. Please do physical activity and asanas with the breath. That will prepare you for pranayama. And then comes the seated pranayamas. Even there are quite a few stages. And pranayama actual is the part where we hold the breath. And see, if you've gone through all this training, then obviously you need not avoid any pranayama practice. But chances are most of us are not going through that kind of a training. And so for that reason, I would say avoid practices like Bhastrika, Brahmari, the forceful exhalations, Kapalabhati, these kinds of practices. If you've not spent enough time slowly connecting to breath and then doing these practices, it could backfire. But for someone who's gone through that journey, even Bhastrika and Kapalabhati would be fantastic practices. Or when
they're very energizing.
Yes, they are fantastic practices. But given that someone has gone through that slow, long preparation for such practices.
So any pranayama you recommend for beginners to start to ease into the benefits?
I would say, see, for beginners, use your asana practice as your pranayama class. For someone, a beginner, to ask them to sit down and simply watch your breath, it's going to be very difficult. And it's the same for all of us. But it's much easier and much more effective and more sustainable if they are doing physical activity and using the breath component in the physical activity, especially like asana practice. Or if they swim, you need to connect to breath. And so such kind of activities are a much better practice I would recommend for a beginner than seated pranayama. That may not be sustainable. You might do it once or twice, but it's not sustainable as I've seen.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chitra. Anybody else has a question? I'm sorry. I hope we have someone answering the chat, but let me also look at it.
Pradeep ji, this is Padma. Thank you so much for
Shana,
and really this is informative. And if I can contribute to, your saying, like, yes, stress is a momentary, but stress can, leave behind a deep injury, and which you may have anxiety spells throughout, because human psychology is that we don't tend to remember the happy moments as much as, the insulting moments, you carry them for. So my experience being, first thing is when you can't cure it, you endure it, right? Like, insult is insult, but it depends on the recipient's level, at what level you get affected, right? So in this hustle bustle, day-to-day modern life, at workplace is where your most mental injuries are going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
that definitely happened to me. And then I do have anxiety spells for no reason. And even though it had happened like 5-6 years back, and that you do yoga practice. I do go for long walks. So physical exercise, what you mentioned, definitely I'm conforming to for a long time. And the one thing which is really helping me during that anxiety spell is having a good 3-4 sips of water. And when I see the palpitation coming and suddenly some nervousness creeping in, immediately I get up and I go get myself a good bottle of water or a glass of water, whatever it is. And then just calm myself. That is how it is working for me. I mean, I don't know, I'm sharing my experience here.
Very valid, Padmaji. And I'm glad you're sharing all this. And I'm sure, we could have such other activities. Yoga is one thing we're talking about, but what we should take home here is the principles that yoga practices follow. And what you're saying is taking a moment to, shift your awareness to something very menial, like drinking water. You go fetch water and you drink water, and you're focusing on that. That moment is when probably that's helping you manage it, move away from it and not allow it to grow and magnify it. So I think it's working great for you. Fantastic. And thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Pradeep.
Okay, who else? Neelambari. Okay, let me look at the other page. Anybody questions?
I do.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Padmaji.
I'm Padma Agrawal. Yes. So I have the same thing. I agree with this, Padmaji, about a sip of water. That works for me as well too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The only problem I have is procrastination. I wish there was a pill or something we can have, and that will help us to get over the procrastination. That's my biggest issue. Not motivation and just procrastination.
So procrastination for doing the practice, during the practice, or for
general? In every single, general, and everything in my life, I say, who cares? I'll do it later. I'm stay home, oh my God. Just excuses after excuses.
Get a partner who can keep you on the edge, as in workout partner or yoga partner. Someone who can.
I have my daughter who is really on top of it. And she herself is like a kickboxer, and she goes all over me. Put on your sneakers, get out of the house, go for a run.
Yeah, so I think you should. I know a human. One of the beauty of human race, the species itself, that we have the support of others, and we could utilize. And Especially in, say, someone who can help us do our daily practice, we should. Get them, hand over the control to them, at least for that 1 hour, say that, you have control to me, your responsibility to get me to start doing this. And you'll see that over a period of time, your body would just, your body and mind both, would just settle into it, and then no looking back. Obviously, habit creation is very important. That's when it is effortless and less energy spent. Otherwise, intellectually motivating you to do something is exhausting. After a while, we all give up mostly. So anything to create a habit, and the older we are, it's more challenging to create a new habit. But nevertheless, we have youngsters around us, then we should just take their help. Give them some control. Thank you, Padma.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or anything you want to share, please, most welcome. Anybody practicing yoga, a specific practice, and that's worked for you in dealing with your stress or anxiety?
Hi, can I go?
Yes, that's Sunita, right?
Yeah, Sunita. Hi. I just recently, like 4 or 5 months back, I have moved to a different country like Canada.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just recently moved from India to Canada, and there's a lot of change in my lifestyle. Like I was working and now I am not. So, and with a lot of changes away from family, like however, I am with my husband and baby, but all the elder ones are away, and with no job, I think every alternate day, my mood swings are there too much. Okay. Someday I'm like all fine. Sometimes I feel like I don't have anything. I feel like hopeless when I don't get interview calls or something like anything. So I think I don't know if I can consider this as my stress or anxiety, because of course it has affected my sleep. So it's not everyday thing, but yeah, like weekly 2 or 3 days when I don't get sleep at all, almost like 3:30, 4:30, and then I wake up. I have to wake up. I feel due to no sleep, I feel dull and all. And with that, I think it affects my other day routine. Like I get a little irritated and I feel lost. So I don't know what I should consider this as. But maybe you can help me to understand.
It looks like, I mean, just on the onset, just by listening to what you're saying, looks like it's early stage, because if it's interfering in your everyday activities, that's a sign that we need to look out for. See, if you're able to do your normal activities, simple things at home without much issues, then chances are we are still managing stress well, even though there is stress. But when it starts to interfere, when it starts to take away from things I've been doing for very long and now I'm not able to or not motivated to do, then obviously it's time to wake up and seek some help, do some interventions. I think you should. And I'm sure you've just moved, so I hear we have a lot of people who might have been in the same situation, maybe a long time back, and have managed it, and there's a support group that you can seek out. I'm sure a lot of them who relocate, not just from India, but from anywhere else to any other place, will have these challenges. And I think seek a support group. I'm sure you have some friends around.
Yes.
Check what they do. I mean, this counseling also could be one other approach, but just talking to people, someone listening to you, or maybe advice also might help. So I mean, that's apart from yoga, that's what I would ask you to do right now.
Sure, thank you. I mean, I think it's not affecting my routine like I am because of a lot of work, household thing. But the moment it's like evening, I started getting in a low and lower, start thinking a lot. And overthinking, which I know that I am, but I'm not able to control that. And I have been attending sometimes Yoga Nidra from the app. So whenever I do that, I'm fine. And as with my baby around, so sometimes I'm missing out. And I don't know, maybe as you said, it's an initial stage of it, and maybe I have to make this as a practice and can help
I
myself.
think what's fantastic in your case is that you're trying to already identify that these changes have happened, and in many cases people are not able to, and it's maybe too late to also have a very meaningful intervention. But yes, I think you are thinking, you are seeing the difference, as in seeing how life has changed, or small things in an everyday activity has changed, and seeking help now and continuing to practice yoga should definitely help.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Most welcome, Sunita.
Pradeep, can I add to this? This is Chitra again.
Chitra, please. Yes, most welcome.
Yeah. So I identify so much with this lady who
Sunita.
just went,
Yeah.
Sunita.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that helps me is I used to learn yoga in India, and you exhale fully and compress your belly and hold it for as long as you can. It's called reach up. And I don't think you need to be an experienced practitioner of yoga, but just holding your breath helps controlling your thoughts. But don't struggle. The moment you feel a struggle, you just let the breath in. And you can do it while walking, sitting at home, whenever. What's your opinion about that? Is it too advanced or?
Yeah, but if you're giving an advice to Sunita, obviously we need to check where Sunita is in her practice, breath practice. Like I said, one thing about breath, I mean, this is just sharing about breath, because breath is a big part of everything we're talking about. Breath is in the Hatha text, right, where the pranayamas are described, breath is identified as something that's like a wild animal, meaning you need to tackle it really carefully. And once you do, you can tame it. You can ride on it like a wild horse. But if you cannot, I mean, if you rush at it, if you take the wrong approach, or if you're too early, too quick, it can backfire. And the breath, that's the only challenge with breath. Anybody doing breath practices, this is a general information that we all should have, that breath can go either way. If you do it the right way, it works fantastic, and it can heal so many things, not just bodily, but mental things. And in some text, yoga text also talks about how breath practices can rewrite your karma as well. So it's highly, valued practice, or a principle that we have in yoga, or even in modern day. On the other hand, if you use it wrongly, or you're too quick, or you don't have enough information about it and you rush through it, then it creates, at a very physical level, it might create breath issues. So be mindful. Breath is no doubt a fantastic tool. Learn it, take time, and connect to it first before you can start to take control. Befriend it. And so that's a very valid practice, Chitra. You just have to check with Sunita where she is, and if she could do this, and if it works for her.
Thank you, Chitra. Thank you, Pradeep. I think I do a bit of yoga, and yes, bit of meditation also, but I don't do a regular practice. That's bad of me. So, but yeah, I will try this, and definitely I would like to connect back to Chitra, or maybe with you to like what's the level is now.
Most welcome, Sunita.
Sure. I'll send you my number.
Sure, Chitra. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So, Pradeep, can I add my perspective on that? Sure. Because, when you put a lot of emphasis on you as a center, like, for example, I went through that too. Like, when 2007, we moved from one place to the other, I had tough time finding a job. Okay. So I started comparing myself with all my cousins, all my relatives, everyone who had job, and why me? So to an extent, it would push me into depression or whatever. So, when I removed me is not important, in the big scheme of things, there is no importance to me. And, I had to move on, and it happens. I know I'm qualified, and it would happen sooner or later. And until that point, I should calm my mind. But that comes with, experience and maturity and all those things. So when you are very young and you want to do these things, probably it is not as meaningful as it is when you kind of. But the one thing which really helped me was I would go to YMCA and participate in their meditation. And the teacher who really, does the meditation for you. And even after the whole class would get up, I would be in deep sleep. Okay. And once I get out of that meditation sleep, Yoga Nidra, And I used to be like a completely new person, completely, re-energized and invigorated and whatnot. So that was the fighter for me. Like that made me strong to fight my depression or whatever. It's not even stress. It is one step above that, beyond that. So
sure. Surely. The meditative practice itself, meditation it starts with a certain requirements of the body and breath and, with the sense organ. But later on, meditation is actually dependent very much on a philosophy that you'll be following. Like you shared a certain philosophy of, me being the center of everything, universe. If I change that perspective, then everything changes for me, right? And it's a philosophy. So which is why the philosophy is very important for meditation. So yoga, when we say yoga practice, yoga asana practice is very popular right now, but if you go back in time, yoga as a philosophy is what is more popular. If you go back in time and what yogic philosophy, yogic approach, yogic understanding or perspective of life, that is what is very popular. So you need to spend a little time on philosophy, the kind of philosophy you're following. And maybe philosophy is something that you can study as well, because once you need to study, understand, and then start using it. It's not just philosophy, just to, have a mental, intellectual activity, but it is useful. So people explore different philosophies. Maybe they accept one, or maybe they pick a little bit from every philosophy. And it could be Eastern, Western, modern, ancient philosophy, mishmash, whatever works. So this philosophy part is an important part of meditation. And you will find answers sometimes when you look into these ancient philosophies, yoga, like I mentioned, from the ancient Eastern philosophies. Spend a little time. You don't have to go deep into it, but at least start. And once you find something, then you'll see that it could change your life. And you use that in your everyday practice and also everyday life. I think we are about 3 minutes over our stipulated time. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And I hope to see most of you in the 5-day challenge that's coming up next week. Otherwise, also, I wish all of you the very best in handling whatever situations you are going through in your life, in your part of the world. There's anything I can do, anything we can do at Shvasa, please write to me, write to us. Very glad to talk to you. Take care. Have a fantastic weekend. Namaste.
Hello, just a quick question I have, sorry.
Vanessa, most welcome. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Can I have your email possibly? Because
sure. Sure, I put it in the comment box right away. Pradeep at Shvasa.com.
So I'm trying to, I'm like in my beginning stages of meditating, and I find tremendous benefits of getting my thoughts together in one spot when I meditate, instead of getting like shattered thinking, and sometimes it's overwhelming when you have a lot of thoughts and you feel helpless not being able to complete all those tasks. I'm just a beginner, right? But how would I be able to kind of isolate myself, or maybe to find a way to better be focused? Because I always try to bring myself to the present moment, but it's not always easy.
Sure, Vanessa. I've shared my email ID, a very valid question that you're asking about meditation practice. And I said meditation is a very important part of stress management, or generally in life, stress or no stress, meditation is very useful. So please write to me. We can talk. We can also chat up, maybe catch up sometime and talk about this. And let's, come to any of the classes. I take the Yoga Nidra classes for now. If you book and practice, maybe one day we could stay back and talk about this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Most welcome. All right, officially closing. Thank you all. Namaste.